Welcome to the Scaleup Valley podcast, where we bring the best of the best to help you scale your business from 1 million to 1 trillion. And this is a very special episode. It's the second episode of the Scaleup Valley Asia edition that we are putting together. And that's why my co-founder, Andrew Wong, is with me today. Andrew, welcome back to the show and to this season.
It's a pleasure to be back and enjoying every single moment of being on the Scaleup Valley podcast.
Thank you, Andrew. And our first guest has been Jason from Staff Any, based in Singapore. And today's guest is also very special. Her name is Nina, the CEO of X0PA. Nina, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike and Andrew. It's such a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for having me.
It's really a pleasure, and we are looking forward to get to know more about your view, and especially as we have been celebrating this week the Women's International Day. It's also great that we are covering two women CEOs in the show in the region very shortly. X0PA and Lenny is also on the way to be recorded, the episodes. But today it's all about Nina and about X0PA. So Nina, we would love to get to know more about you. So please feel free to present you to the community.
Sure. Just a little background about me. I'm the founder and CEO of X0PA. My background is I'm an electronics engineer, so I'm a bit of a geek at heart. And I studied engineering, but never followed a technical role. It was always people that excited me, and I was always very sales and entrepreneur driven. So having worked with ICL for a few years, I then realized I needed to do something on my own. I think I was a bit of a rebel, so I wanted to create my own story rather than follow a story. So I started my first venture in 1997 in a small town called Noida, just outside New Delhi in India. It was a recruitment firm, search firm, and HR consulting, where we used a lot of tech and data to kind of help companies hire better, but a very brick and mortar company, expanded to 5 continents, till I realized that there are fantastic tools like data science and artificial intelligence, which can completely change the whole way we hire and the future of hiring. So it was in 2017, along with my co-founder, Dr. X0PA, who's the head of data science at NUS in Singapore. We started X0PA, and the main ethos was around how do we remove bias from hiring so that you're hiring better, you're hiring smarter, not just because it's the right thing to do, but it's the smart thing to do, right? Both for the employee and for the client.
Absolutely. I love the vision and the mission, and of course your background, your story. It has been some decades working on this field, and this field is becoming critical for any company, and especially for the VC backed and the scale-up ones that really needs to attract the best talent possible to be able to execute their visions. So let us know a little bit more about what would be the long-term vision of the company. What would be success for you with X0PA?
Yeah, just to kind of step a little bit back on what we do at X0PA is we are trying to resolve hiring and selections in an equitable fashion. And we like to capture the life cycle of the job seeker, right from internship to graduate to getting into work life, and then and moving up during the work life, so up to mid to senior level. And precisely like I mentioned, hiring, we have gone past equal opportunities. I think it's time for equitable opportunities. A lot of time one big problem I noticed in 20 years of recruitment was when it is a very manual, human-driven recruitment process. Firstly, there is no there's no one standard because what is good for me may not be good for you or for Andrew.
Right.
And we all have so much of subjectivity in the way we see what we want to see, we hear what we want to hear in the interview. So there's just bias at every level, and recruiters typically tend to screen people out. You tend to kind of take a look at the resume and say, boom, 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 this is not there. Let's screen people out and start making a long list into a short list. And this is where the problem lies, right? So with technology, firstly, scale is not a problem. You're not dealing with, you can deal with 100,000 million applications at one time and still give it a very objective view. So that's the first thing, that you are able to give an opportunity to a much larger base of people, which typically would get screened out. And the second, of course, is screening out, giving opportunity to the ones that are usually screened out at the first or the second level. That's why what Zopa does is the first few stages of hiring are completely machine driven, so that your long list is objective. You are giving much more opportunities to people who may be overlooked, whether it is because of gender or background or qualifications. Qualifications is yet another big topic, as we would know, right?
Exactly.
Ivy school versus non-Ivy school, tier 1 versus tier 2. These are all biases. It doesn't guarantee that the person is going to be a good or a bad performer, right? So really kind of using the machine, which does not have any emotions, is very objective, takes it to a particular stage. And then let's face it, I mean, recruitment is a human function. So we have to augment it at the right stage. But if you move the human to the right, towards the end of the process, you've really ensured a lot of objectivity in the process. And that's what Zopa stands for. So back to your question, what is my vision? It is giving equal opportunities and equitable opportunities to people who get overlooked, and really kind of breaking that bias is like the purpose we get up for every morning. And you will see that passion in every single person in Zopa, in our team.
Absolutely, it's that's really fantastic what you are putting together, and completely aligned with the trends that we see in the industry and the needs of the industry. So, in terms of ideal customer profile, what are some of the main geos that you are serving, industries, sizes of companies?
Sure. So there are three main sectors, Mike. We've got the organizations. So this is, of course, the most obvious are the enterprises, because hiring is a big problem there when it comes to numbers and biases and, just the number, the sheer scale. Of course, mid-size and even some small ones, because we do a lot of work with recruitment process outsourcing companies. So any company which is hiring regularly, or where hiring is a very vital function. And in some industries, hiring is your revenue is directly connected to hiring, right? Like this could be recruitment process outsourcing, it could be IT services company, where your time to revenue gets impacted if you don't hire on time. Exactly. And don't hire. So time to hire, cost to hire, those companies definitely. The other big sector that we are very, very bullish about is public sector and government. We are on the accredited lane of IMDA in Singapore. What that means is they do like a blanket due diligence and open every hood of your platform and AI and algorithms, and they give like a verdict that so they do kind of a due diligence on behalf of the ministries and the government departments. So we do a lot of work with government, and it's very heartening to see how Singapore government has really embraced Zopa's algorithms towards removing bias and subjectivity. So we power the most important portal of Singapore, which is My Career's Future, which is the national portal of hiring. So that's powered by Zopa. And then the third sector is education, colleges. We probably work with 80% of polytechnics in Singapore, and most of them use Zopa. Again, because our AI helps in not just matching for capability, but also for compatibility between organizations and interns. So internships, admissions, scholarships, these are great use cases of Zopa's algorithms for bias-free selections.
I love it. Yeah.
I think one of the things that our audience will probably also want to know is, you have presence in many other countries, aside from Singapore. So how does Zopa actually expand so fast, so rapidly, as a SaaS company? I know technology is scalable, yes, but when it comes to business, market, and so on, what is the X factor that contributed to your rapid expansion?
It's a great question, Andrew. And I think the first big impetus, like you yourself said, that it's a SaaS platform, right? It's cloud-based. That makes it extremely scalable. So being on cloud itself cuts down a lot of barriers to entry into new markets. For example, you don't have to have project teams on site. You don't have to have engineers going and implementing on-site software because it's all controlled from the control center. So that is one big barrier taken care of. In terms of selecting, so at the moment, we would do a lot of work within Asia-Pac, beyond Singapore. We do work in Indonesia. We've started to do work in Philippines. We're looking at Australia, New Zealand. India is a very big market for us. We started India a year back, and we're already kind of scaling massively. The reason why we chose India, of course, is because one, I understand that market. I come from India, and we also have our engineering team partly based out in India. So India's, and of course, nobody can deny the consumption capability of India. So that was the other reason why we chose India. United Arab Emirates was a very, very interesting expansion. We were actually invited. So we got named as AI automation innovator by IDC in 2019. And on back of that, the private office of Sheikh Al Maktoum, they got in touch with us and they said they'd love to see the technology come into an AI in hiring, come into the UAE market because there's so much of scope there. Again, so that was a big anchor there where we decided that that is a market we should focus on. And United Kingdom, this is my second home, and I have lived here for more than 15 years. So there was again that affinity, but that was not the reason why we came here. Just the whole topic around bias-free hiring, diversity and inclusion is very topical in the UK, and most companies are really gearing towards the D&I and bias-free hiring. So there's a huge potential for us here as well. I can already see two other markets that we are going to scale to from here. One, definitely the US. Again, bias-free hiring is a big topic there. So we see that is a big entry point for us, and Canada. So I already see that happening towards the second half of this year. So to your question, cloud helps, SaaS helps. Barrier to entry is much lower when you have a cloud SaaS-based platform. But of course, you need to have some anchor and some kind of a, rather than just going very cold into a new market. So we also have a very strong partner network. We have a partner team constantly looking at partnerships. So we go for a new market either based on a partner anchor or a client anchor, or just a very strong reason why we should look at that market, So here in the UK, we are already 5 people, 5 very senior folks out here, and looking at US in the second half.
Got it. That's amazing. And let's cover the importance of expansion and some of your experience in the expansion chapter now. So maybe first, why Singapore to start up Zopa, right?
Oh my God, so many reasons, Mike. I could go on and on. One, it is just such a startup-friendly country. I know that a lot of startups come from the US. That's supposed to be the mecca of startups. But I would say for me, Singapore has been amazing. the kind of support that you get from the ecosystem is just incredible. So the government support, firstly, you don't feel alone. You feel really backed. When I started in 2017, and remember, as a bootstrapped new startup, although it's my second venture, there's always that little bit of fear, how are we going to scale, how are we going to grow? But the kind of support you get from the government, from the organizations which are semi-government in India, in Singapore, is just incredible. So I would say that was my number one big reason for Singapore. Secondly, Singapore is just so beautifully located when it comes to the hub, right? It's a massive Asia Pacific hub, and so you are able to address Malaysia, Indonesia, Hong Kong, Australia. So it's a great hub from that perspective. It's English speaking, so entry point is super easy, so that was the other big reason. It's very, very, again, the kind of grants you get from the government, the kind of financial, whether it is loans or debts, and now the VC world is becoming extremely hot in that region. So I can go on and on about Singapore and how much Singapore has supported me. I couldn't have done this if I was not in Singapore, really.
And definitely, as you describe it, I can see two patterns in your decision making in order to pick up markets. Of course, correct me if I'm wrong. First, it needs to be English-speaking markets. And second, of course, where there is an appreciation about this free bias recruitment needs, right? Because you have, even in the Southeast Asia region, you have talked about Malaysia and Indonesia. And then you have, of course, talked about Australia and New Zealand as another an opportunity for expansion. And then, of course, in the UK and the US and Canada. So that it's really a global expansion, but all are English-speaking markets, right? But of course, we should almost consider that some of these markets will be enough to create a very big player, right? So for instance, just being able to expand successfully into Indonesia, not to talk about India, then. So if you are successful doing that, you have a unicorn, an amazing company, a huge company, and you don't need to bother about the UK, the US, or Canada at all. So tell us a little bit more about why are you considering still India, the UK, the US, and Canada in your expansion strategy?
Yeah, multiple reasons. One, we were very clear for the first 2-3 years that we need to crack Singapore. We need to make sure there's a product market fit. Singapore ticks a lot of boxes as a universal global country. So one can very safely assume that if it is working in Singapore, there's a good chance of it working in most markets. So for the first 2-3 years, we just wanted to get the density, we wanted to get the name out there, we get the brand. So once we got Singapore right, we had to kind of expand. Now, to your question, why? Well, for multiple reasons, right? Like at some point of time, VCs, I think, also want to see a global story. So we don't want to stay Series A all our life, right? Like you want to go up the ladder. So I think one, of course, it has to be. Secondly, like I said, because barrier to entry is kind of low because of the SaaS cloud, you need to do the A/B testing, right? Like, you don't know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And time also has an opportunity loss. Now, if I'm going to do it sequentially and I'll say, okay, let me first try India, and then if the India story doesn't work out, then I try UK. I'm already going to be 10 years down the line, right? So time is of the essence, scale is of the essence. So we are kind of sowing our seeds. typically takes between 6 to 8 months to see how that market is performing and whether it's going to be a core market for us. And once we identify it's a core market, then we go completely in to make sure that we are scaling within that market. Then there's going to be a lot of expansion within that market. So we've identified that with the UAE, we are very bullish. So not only are we there on our own, but we also have a whole lot of partners out there. We have the partnership with the private office. We've got a massive distributor there who've got 250 resellers out there. So then we went completely, once we established the A/B testing, and same goes with India, so we are doing our alpha beta testing. If it shows the promise that we hope, then we're going to go all in and scale within that market. But, you need to kind of dip your toes a little bit to see what's working, what's not working. I don't think you can swim by standing on the side of the pool. A very cliched saying, but it really means, it does explain a lot of things. So you got to dip in, see, but don't go all in so that you kind of drown, but just do that alpha beta testing, see what the vibe you're getting, and then kind of play with that. So so we are on that A/B testing with the UK, but I think we've already established that with India. We've established that with UAE and of course APAC markets for sure.
That's a very good point, and I would like to emphasize this for the community that are listening to us. Really, it's really important to have a very ambitious long-term vision. And then I really like your approach about testing the waters in different markets and see how the market reacts and where the traction comes from before doubling down and really creating a prioritization list about what are the markets that we will allocate the most resources at a certain point. Exactly. Because we really need to have those portfolio of markets, in this case, a portfolio of geos, to understand what are the ones that are ready to scale up and what are the ones that we need to create the roots to be able to scale up later and start the startup process first. Exactly. And as you're saying, it takes time, and in a journey that we want to do in a decade, we need to be quite aggressive in that approach without getting lost in so many markets. So testing is different than executing, right? Than putting the metal in the pedal and scaling up. This is really an interesting insight. And to see that traction is really also what you said, is interest from a partner or from clients on the ground. This shows that it might be a market that we want to double down into. The issue here is also from an executive or leadership team point of view, is how to manage so many different time zones. I also have this problem at Scaleup Valley, so I'm always curious to learn how are you able, or I know that you don't have yet the problem with the US, and of course being based in the UK, it's +8 into Singapore, -8 into the Pacific time, -5 into New York. How do you see that evolving in terms of your headquarters to be able to manage your global leadership team at a certain time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest here. I rely very heavily on my leaders. I've got extremely strong leadership team in Asia, for example. So they take away my day-to-day pain, as you would say. But of course, you got to do the basic things of getting up pretty early in the morning so that you can catch at least 4 to 5 hours of Asia. But I think again the key is that I hope I am taking a more helicopter view of the business and relying on my second line of leadership, and that needs to be super strong. Like, they need to be stronger than me, so I definitely like to hire people who are better than me in more than one ways, and they are. So I think that is a big relief for me. So I can actually sit back and take a strategic view, put a distance between me and the business. Otherwise, we are all going to be doing the same thing, right? Like, so I will be doing what they are doing, which doesn't make sense. So I need to do something different from what they are doing. So yeah, execution is taken care of. I take a more strategic viewpoint on this, and we work around the challenges. Yes, It's not been so bad so far, but you're right. But of course, I must say, I don't know if it is good or bad, but whenever I do travel to most of the hubs,
Right.
and I have this problem or this kind of a good part where when I go into that market, I literally wear the hat of that. So when I go to Singapore, I become tone deaf to everything else. So I'm just focused on the Singapore market. When I'm in the UK, I'm kind of being a bit more neutral. But yeah, but I don't know if it is good or bad. But that's just me,
Yeah. I was just talking about it also because we are seeing the explosion of the importance of mental health at work. Also, it's a place where finally we are removing some of the stigma about talking about the topic, and we know that entrepreneurs are much more, the probability of an entrepreneur have a mental health condition is much higher than any other person, given the pressure, the roller coaster of emotions that we are that we live, right, and that we need to be resilient into. And of course, the burnout is also a reality across entrepreneurs, and being in different time zones is really it's very demanding from the CEO. But I like your point. It also forces us to be able to delegate and create a very strong team around us, because we know from the beginning that we will not be able to be covering the US, the UK, and Asia at the same time, because we would be, as you said, waking up very early and going to bed very late, and it would be impossible to have a proper rest.
Absolutely. No, absolutely, Mike. I am a huge advocate of sleep, first of all. So 8 to 9 hours. If I don't sleep for it, my cognition is going to be quite low. So no, and it goes the same with our team as well. We have a very flexible working. Nobody's expecting people to kind of clock in and clock out, and it's all very result oriented and KPI oriented. People know what they have to do. We have a lot of trust in our teams. And at the end of the day, performance speaks for itself, right? I guess this is probably the upside of remote working, that you're not so focused on tasks. You become a bit more result oriented, and you focus more on outcomes. So that's the good part of working remote, and where you take a little bit of a distance and see, okay, what have I achieved, rather than, okay, I'm working on task 1, 2, 3, 4, which honestly is very, that's very stressful.
So you're actually now painting the future of work, right? It's now the future of work. So what will be the future of work now after this COVID, when we move into endemic phase? Probably you have a comment on that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in a way, UK is already kind of living the endemic life. As you know, everything is open. There is now even the law says you don't have to isolate if you are COVID positive. And so they're really living the endemic life. My view is that we have learned a lot by COVID. There have been some good things and some not so good things. But the good part is I think some things will stay. One is the hybrid working. The companies will be a bit more flexible about it. Used to be considered a perk to work from home earlier, right? Whereas now it is going to be kind of very, very understood. I think companies will start adopting hybrid. Companies who insist on 5 days in the office are going to probably face a lot of attrition, because there's a choice. People want to be kind of given the liberty to make a choice on how they should work. So flexibility, more result-oriented, less breathing down the neck, and task-oriented outcome is what is going to come. I think the other big workforce that is going to be created is the gig force. So the gig workers, people are taking a stock of their life and saying, I don't want to be, I just want to do things that I like. So it is going to give a more stronger impetus to gig economy, both for the employee, but also for the employer, right? Like we hear about the great resignation. So the employers are also going to start preferring that, okay, I'm going to balance my workforce between full-time and gig work so that I'm not constantly trying to combat with the resignations and the constant churn. So there's going to be one section of the company which is going to be probably more reliant on gig working.
So actually that brings to my next question. Because when you do all this remote working or hybrid working, and we all know that in order for a company to push its objective, there must be alignment in terms of target, goal, culture, vision, mission. But with remote working, how do we get the remote workers to be very much aligned with where the company wants to go or where the management wants to go? I think this become a problem. Right? That's where the pros and cons argument comes in between remote working and going back to office to get everyone to be in the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
What's the comment? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, Andrew. But, you know, see, the thing is, I think like you yourself said, the company is, people come to work because there's a purpose, right? What gets you out of the bed is purpose. And I think that articulation from top management down to interns should be very, very clear. What is the purpose of the company? Why are you working with, you know, why are you working here? And more than ever, people are very driven by the whole purpose and the ethos of the company. Secondly, the values. And I think it's really important to kind of articulate and always walk your talk, not just put the 5 values, you know, but you have to walk your talk. If you say, like for us, respect is the biggest value, and you know, so you have to walk your talk. So I think you have to identify what your values are and be able to articulate. So in every month's town hall meeting or every monthly meeting or quarterly town hall, you need to kind of talk about it and make sure that every new person who's joining in is in tune with all of that. So I think a lot goes on the communication, especially when you're working remote. One thing that kind of which falls between cracks is communication, right? Because everybody's working. So I think you need to find that playbook as a company, what works for you in terms of proper communication. I can give you an example of how we do it. So for example, we have an online training platform that we use to onboard every single newcomer who comes in, irrespective of what level, whether they are interns or whether they are senior management. They have to go through, I think it's almost 20 hours of training. They have to go through that online platform. The advantage of that online platform is that you don't miss anything, right? Like we've put in everything, right? From values to culture to product training to sales training to client management, you know, all of that. So at least we get one unified voice across to every news. That's the first step. And then they spend time with every single leader. My job is to make sure that the 12 people report, the 12 leaders who report to me, I'm constantly emphasizing, and their job is to then constantly reinforce it with their teams and so on, you know. So no one person can do this, Andrew. It has to perpetuate, it has to go down, you know, everybody needs to take the responsibility. And that's where the value of ownership and being part of the, you know, feeling part of the team is just so important, where you take the initiative to make sure that, okay, you know, I transport these values and this culture down to my team, you know.
Yeah.
People will do what the leaders, they will follow the leader, right? Like in a lot of ways, you know, they will emulate what. So I think it's every person's responsibility to make sure, right down to interns, this goes down the line.
Yeah, that's a very interesting description of how you do it in your company. Actually, I have a question that skip. So after many off tangent, actually, I'm interested to know what kind of leadership team that you hire. What will be the characteristic that you will hire into your leadership team? That
And
would be
first
an
thing
interesting
first, we are
question.
in a fortunate situation to have our own platform, right? So
Yes.
yes, so we eat our own dog food.
Great catch.
All our hiring is compulsory done through the platform. One, it of course gives us direct feedback, right, to improve things on our platform directly, direct from us to the engineering team. But there are two things, of course, in every hiring: is what can the person do, and how is the what and the how, right? And so the skills, but also the attitude and your ethos as an individual. If your personal values are not aligned with company's values, there's going to be a friction down the road, and it's not going to last, right? It's going to be a short relationship. So I think it's really important to make sure that the person you're hiring firstly has the same values as the company's. And then, of course, they should be able to do the job, right? In startup, we can't afford not to perform. My shareholders are going to be up in arms, so I think performance is just very, very key, but also attitude and initiative and that whole mindset of feeling, taking that ownership is just so important.
It's all great point here. So we have so many topics to cover and such a short period of time. We would love to go on and on and on. That's an amazing guest. Thank you, Nina, again for joining us today. But before going into the wrap-up questions, those series of questions that we have created recently, so let's just cover quickly the fundraising insights.
Sure.
And also the fact that you are a women CEO, and that you have also being able to walk the talk with investors. So if you can share some insights on those two fronts, that would be great for the ones who are listening to us.
Sure. So on the fundraise, our journey was mostly bootstrapped initially, and then we had friends and family. So the real rubber hit the road when we tried to do our Series A. So every stereotype that you've heard in the books is true.
Unfortunately, well, I'd say that you would tell us that it will be different, that with you it was different.
No, it wasn't different. It was... but ultimately, I mean, it was a hard journey, also because we were quite demanding ourselves. I wanted to make sure that we have a diverse set of investors. So walk our diversity talk. We were quite clear that it's no point having investors just from one market. It's not going to help us scale. Scaling is a big story for us, and we do want to go global. So I think I must have probably spoken to more than 200 investors, and this is not an exaggeration. Either they didn't like us or we didn't like them. So not for any other reason, but maybe it was not in their ethos, or they did not believe in the story. But ultimately, I think everything happens for a reason and for the best. And I mean, the set of investors we've got, I couldn't have asked for better investors. They were so aligned on the mission of removing bias from hiring, and of course, scaling hiring for organizations for better outcomes for candidates and employers. So we've got ICCP, SBI Holdings from Philippines and Japan as our lead investor, Enterprise Singapore from our home ground and from Singapore government. We've got Excel Next of Taiwan. We've got Alpha Impact Ventures from San Francisco. So here my story of US is also going to kind of now nurture down. We've got SASV, which are very strong in Australia and Singapore. I mean, so it's been a very diverse set of investors, just extremely delighted to have them on board. Our board meetings are a pleasure with the kind of, everybody is very aligned to the values. So that was Series A. We are hoping to do our Series B towards the second half of the year. We're going to start working on it after summer, so from September. I've realized you need to give it, so just to manage everybody's expectations, start 6 to 8 months before. So that was the other big learning. You need to also start nurturing relationships with investors. It's not an overnight relationship. You need to kind of create relationships, make sure that you're sending them regular reports and updates on how you are scaling and how you're growing, so that there is a belief in your story, rather than just doing a cold approach and saying, invest in me. So I think I've learned a lot from that exercise. It is a full-time job.
Absolutely.
It's like doing a proper sales and a proper business development, but I've learned a lot. It's been an amazing exercise.
Love it. That's really great insights that you have shared about how to manage those relationships, and never forgetting that investors become almost co-founders.
Yes.
And you, as with co-founders, you don't have the option of letting them go easily, right? So
Yes.
you really need to be careful with the ones you marry with.
You're 100% right. 100% right. Absolutely. It's very important to be aligned, especially as a founder, because you are so used to kind of having a set plan for your future. So you want to make sure that everybody is on their journey together. Otherwise, it's going to kind of any deviations are necessarily going to be distractors. So yes, it's really important, whether it's good or bad. I just want to share one thing for the viewers again here. One thing I love about the board that we have is, for every update, they say, yes, great. It's great to see the highlights, because that continues to keep us the belief. But more important is to see the lowlights, so we call it the lowlight. There's a full page of lowlights, just to make sure that we are not getting blindsided. And their approach to that is very, very collaborative. It's very helpful that, let's look at that. And so I think it's really important to have the right investors who are going to work along with you.
This is a great point, because there are boards which the members are so busy that they hate to have bad news. So
yes.
The CEO and founder feels very lonely, because he or she is not able to share the lowlights and the issues that keep them awake at night, which is, I think, a waste of energy and time, not having a board that serves you, having a board that you need to serve, which should be exactly the opposite of what a great board should do. So if the investors are listening to this podcast, I invite you to be a better board member. And this also applies to me, trying to serve instead of asking from the entrepreneur, as we are the boss of the entrepreneur.
Very good point, and very well articulated, Mike. You're 100% right. Yes.
So today I'm a little bit sharp. Sorry for the ones. Perfect. So we come to the segment of the quick questions and quick answers. So if you would have the opportunity to have a coffee with yourself, what advice would you offer to your younger self at the beginning of your journey with XOPA?
I would say that, focus on product as number one, which, I think the product goes a long way. Try to get your sales team as the next step. So first get the product to at least have the product market fit. So don't invest in a sales team too early, in your initial days. The second big change I would have is I would start the fundraise much earlier than I did this time around. My expectation was it's going to be a breeze. It's going to be a 2-month process. That's not the case. It's a 1-year process. So I would probably be much more planned when it comes to investors, and I would get investors much earlier in life. I think third, which I think we are already doing, is surround yourself with, the CEO's life, like you said, is quite lonely. You need to make sure that you have a good working environment, like they say, so your work environment comes from your leadership team. So hire people who share the same vision, the same passion, so that they motivate you if you're having a bad day. You can't have a good day every single day of your life. So I think it's really important you have people watching your back as well. And CEOs can be vulnerable, and I think if you have the right leadership team, that vulnerability gets overcome, and as a team you rise. So the last point, of course, we're still doing it, but I don't know if I would do very differently, but I think I would just manage my expectation on the fundraise a little bit more.
Amazing, great points. What are you the most proud from your path so far?
The purpose, absolutely. I mean, for me, personally, and I know that it is for my founder and for my leadership team, the purpose of what we are doing, which is to make sure we are, creating workplace happiness by the right match, removing bias at every level. That we are very proud of that purpose. And we've got a side organization which takes the purpose a little more forward. It's called Empower. We are trying to help companies hire more people with neurodiversity, like people on the autism spectrum or ADHD and so on, because that's a forgotten society as well. There's a huge bias. Oh my God, talk about bias. So yes, working towards that. I'm super proud of what our purpose is.
That's really amazing. Congratulations. Worst advice ever received?
What's the worst advice?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my God. I can't think of anything really kind of off my hat right now, but yeah, I'm so sorry. I should have prepared for this, Mike.
No. This one is quite spontaneous. It's normal if it doesn't pop up and the final.
Yeah, it might come by the time we end this talk.
And the final two are also quite simple. So, favorite business book?
Good to Great. I love that book.
Amazing, from Jim Collins.
Yes.
Any favorite movie or series, and it doesn't need to be business related, but that inspire you?
Oh my God. I am a romantic at heart. I love my rom-coms. Movies like Notebook, they're my ever favorite. So that's the only genre that kind of agrees with me. Comedy or romantic, that's it. So anything in that genre is great.
And
I was expecting you to say Bollywood movies.
Oh, I love Bollywood movies. I watched every single Bollywood movie, which is non-violent. Yes, 100%. You're absolutely right, Andrew.
Amazing, Nina. Andrew, any final remarks or any final question before we go?
Oh no, I'm fine. I'm very enjoying the session very much with Nina, but unfortunately we are running out of time. Okay. I don't have so much time to ask more, but yeah, it's a good session today. Thank you.
Fantastic. It's been such a pleasure. I really enjoyed our session, and thank you again for having me, and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Nina and Andrew. So, and to our community, as you see, we keep bringing you the best of the best and trying to have honest conversations and really sharing what is behind the scenes. What are the successes and the highlights and the lowlights, as Nina was saying before. See you soon and keep scaling.